I still remember the sound of that night clearly. The wind howled like a wounded beast, and the rain pounded against the windows as if the entire ocean was trying to break into the house. It was the biggest storm our small coastal town in Florida had seen in 30 years. They called it Hurricane Felix. But to me, it was the night when everything I thought mattered was swept away. I lived alone in the little wooden house my husband, Robert, had built with his own hands more than 40 years ago. It wasn't fancy, just 2 bedrooms, a creaky old porch, and a small garden where I grew lavender and mint. Robert had passed away 10 years before that storm. But that house, it was our story. Every corner held traces of him. His fishing hat still hanging on the rack, his old toolbox in the shed, and that familiar scent of aged wood I'd breathe in every morning as I made coffee. That evening, I sat watching the weather report, hoping the storm would change direction. But the anchor said, "It's too late. It's heading straight for the coast." I looked around the house, the photographs, the worn-out sofa, and Lucy, my old cat, hiding under the table. When the wind began to scream like a siren, I grabbed the cat, a few photographs, and ran to the car. The power went out just as I stepped outside. A flash of lightning lit up the sky, then everything went black again. I drove through sheets of rain toward the church, the designated shelter. Inside, some people cried, some prayed, and others just stared into the void. That night, I didn't sleep. I just listened. Listened as the storm tore away everything that once made up my life. By dawn, the world was no longer the same. The air was thick with the smell of salt, wet wood, and loss. My heart pounded as I drove back, afraid of what I might find. When I reached the end of the dirt road where my house once stood, there was nothing left. No walls, no roof. Only a bare concrete foundation and a few splintered boards half buried in sand. I stood there for a long time, unable to speak. I just held the cat close to my chest, looked at the wreckage, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Robert. I couldn't save it." In the days that followed, I stayed in a small motel room arranged by the Red Cross. Every morning, I returned to the site, searching for anything that might have survived. One morning, I found our 2 wedding rings, rusted but still linked together. Another day, I uncovered his old fishing knife, the blade dull, yet intact. Then I found a photograph, the 2 of us standing in front of the house on the day it was finished. His arm was around my shoulder, both of us smiling brightly, as if life ahead could only bring happiness. I pressed the photo to my chest and cried. Not because I'd lost the house, but because I realized memories don't get washed away. They stay, right here in my heart. A week later, something unexpected happened. A neighbor named Jim showed up, holding a hammer and a thermos of coffee. He said, "You shouldn't be here alone, Margaret. Let me help you clean up." At first, I could only nod. Then another person came, then 2, then 3. Soon there were a dozen people, men, women, even a few young folks, all working together, clearing debris, gathering whatever could still be saved. A young woman about 20 handed me a small tin box. Inside were old letters my husband had written. She smiled and said, "Maybe he wanted them to stay here with you." That afternoon, as the sun set, we sat together beside the remains of the house, just a few wooden planks left. We shared sandwiches, passed around cups of coffee. Some laughed, some shed tears. That laughter, I hadn't heard it in weeks. It sounded like sunlight after the storm. Time passed. Together we rebuilt. One fence, one roof, one wall at a time. The storm had torn down our homes, but it had also torn down the invisible walls between people. Before, we lived next to each other, but were never truly close. After the storm, we ate together, worked together, shared our pain and our hope. One afternoon, Jim handed me a glass of lemonade and said, "Sometimes it takes a storm to remind people that they need one another." He was right. Nearly a year later, my house was standing again. It didn't look the same, smaller, newer, but it was full of warmth. As I stepped through the door, I felt as if Robert was there, smiling. Not because the things were intact, but because the love still was, a love rebuilt for the second time. On the living room wall, I hung the old photo I had found, and next to it, a wooden plaque engraved with the words, "After the storm, I found my peace." Now, every morning, I make my coffee and sit by the window, watching the revived street outside. Children ride their bikes, neighbors smile and wave, and sometimes Jim still stops by with a thermos of hot coffee. People often ask me, how did you manage to stay so strong? I always smile and answer truthfully, I'm not strong, at least not on my own. There were days I wanted to give up, staring at the empty concrete foundation, feeling as though the storm had taken me too. But then I remembered what Robert once said, the house isn't in the walls or the roof, Maggie, it's in the love we put into it, and no storm can destroy love. Now I understand. The storm never truly took my home. It only cleared the way for a new one to begin. Sometimes when it rains, I sit on the porch and close my eyes. I listen to the gentle rhythm of raindrops on the tin roof, steady, soft, comforting. I'm not afraid anymore. Because now the rain reminds me that after the wind comes peace, after fear comes faith. After loss, if we open our hearts, love always finds its way back. Once, I thought storms were something to avoid. Now I see them as teachers. Because storms sweep away what's unnecessary, leaving behind what truly matters, people, kindness, and connection. The night of Hurricane Felix, I thought I had lost everything. But in truth, I found more than I ever had before. Humanity, faith, and the real meaning of life. We can rebuild houses and replace things, but what we build between hearts, that's what lasts forever. And when someone asks me about that stormy night, I smile softly and say, yes, I lost my home, but I found myself again. And some afternoons when the golden light spills across the reborn street, I whisper quietly, after the storm, I found my peace. Because I've learned, peace isn't when life is calm, but when you've survived the storm and still choose to love.